Welcome back to episode 3 of the NDPA Water Safety Podcast. How you doing today, Laura?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Just another
Are you,
day in paradise,
are you
Adam.
not
Just
are you
another
not
day in paradise.
satisfied with your mic position or something?
I'm getting. I'm gonna be fine. It's gonna be all right. I think for sure because I have like two of my favorite people that I get to stare at for the next however many minutes. So I'll be fine no matter what happens with my mic. Everything's
So
gonna be happy.
before we bring Alissa in, I want to ask you one question, Laura. How many times a day do you say it's just going to be okay or just going to be all right?
I'd say it's a mantra so much that I don't even notice it, and that I actually say it out loud. And often may be like at a grocery store or something, and I'm like, "It's gonna be okay." And they're looking at me like, "I'm fine. What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry, was that out loud?" I'm so sorry about that. But if you needed the message, I need it at all times.
Well,
Yeah.
it used to be, my friends used to say during the month of, we were getting ready for the conference, I would just start saying, everything's
Oh,
fine, everything's fine, everything's fine.
it's fine.
But it never stopped after
And
like the
now we're gonna have
2020
two of
conference.
them,
Yeah.
Adam.
I
And now
uh,
thank you so much for that. Yeah.
you're welcome. All right. We're going to bring our guest today, Alissa Magrum, in. I am so excited to have Alissa Magrum here. When Laura and I first started talking about the podcast and what we were going to do with this podcast, Laura, you threw out, let's focus on people's water safety story. What's the story behind
Yeah.
what they do? And I got to tell you, the first guest I thought of was Alissa Magrum because I just love her. I love what she does. I love the energy she brings. And I'm just so interested to hear her story. So welcome, Alissa. Good to have you with us
Hi,
today.
Alyssa. I was going to
Hi.
say really quickly, Adam was going to say, as a part of that, we talked about our webinar series is a bit more in the educational, spectrum. And that's why we really wanted to, especially if people are only listening versus looking at video, to hear this. And we've talked so much in this space about that balance between education and storytelling and
Mm-hmm.
telling our stories. And if there's one thing that is common throughout all of drowning prevention, is that pretty much everyone involved has a story. And if you really look into it, if anybody's listening, do yourself a favor over the next week and talk and ask people. Most of them have seen a water rescue at the beach. They've seen, they've had a drowning incident, or they've been touched by it somehow. And so hearing those stories is so important to convey why people are really in this space, because it is a complex problem. And I actually, whenever I'm talking about drowning prevention or water safety anywhere, I always start with a story, and I choose always one of the Families United stories. Okay. And one of them, just the other day at a country club, I was talking about Colin, and I was talking about his story, and I was saying to them the importance, there he is, best day ever. And I was talking to them about their policies. And so, but I start with the story, which always brings people in. And then you can get to sort of all the technicalities and things like that, right? And what you're really trying to accomplish. But it really helps to also set the moment and get people to understand, we're not just talking about whether kids should wear bracelets based on swimming ability, and it kind of brings people to the heart of the matter. It's like, this is what we're really talking about here. And then you can bring them back, right,
Yeah.
to the types of
And
systems,
it makes it
policies you want to put in
personal.
place.
It's got to be personal. It's got to
Yeah.
tap into the
It does.
personal.
And so I am very excited for Alyssa's story, because it is not a story where it was your own family member or your own child, but there was another deep connection there that led you to this space. And then, of course, the person that you are, that we all know you to be, and being someone who gives all of herself, even so much of herself, to everyone else around her, including and everyone else in this space. She also serves on our advisory board as well. And, Alissa is a wealth of knowledge and information.
She's the co-chair of the NDPA Advisory Council, and I was just thinking
Yes,
in my
the
head,
co-chair now.
all the stuff Alissa does. She's the executive director at Colin's Hope.
I know, I'm like,
She plays a role in the Texas Drowning Prevention Alliance, helps with our conference planning, helps with Families United, leading member of Families United, participating in the U.S. Water Safety Action Plan development. And Alissa, I'm sure you could rattle off like 100 other things you do. So,
and speaks a lot of your language, Adam, with the research-based work that Alissa does,
Yeah.
And so I know we're going to get to
Totally.
your story, but, she really takes a space. And the last thing I will say is that when we talk about sharing each other's information, Adam, I think at this point, almost everything we've done, we always talk about not recreating the wheel.
Yeah.
Well, Alissa, we realized the very first incident of this was realizing how many water watcher cards water safety cards, water that were out there, and that everyone is creating their own card. But Alissa had created a card that was research-based, that was, there it is, that was done so well. And she said, well, wait a minute, why don't we just co-brand this? So now basically Alissa has another job where she now produces these cards for everybody and their brother.
Yeah.
There's some interesting foundation one.
Yeah, so if you guys are looking, we can also send you see that it's got all the information. I mean, Alissa researched the material, the size, the way it was done, down to every card that was letter on that thing to make sure that it was working properly. And so now everybody uses her card. And so that was a great example of one of the first and most successful, frankly, partnerships within this space of sharing really great information. So now that we've taken half of the podcast to talk about how amazing she is.
Do you know what's so funny about that, of the research of this actual piece, is we researched so many materials because we wanted something that was waterproof so that it could be around the pool. We soaked different pieces of material in water for multiple days to see what stood up. So, I mean, you're totally spot on. There was a process. It's now the process.
I know. So why, when somebody has taken all of this time, all of this work to look at all of these incredibly, somebody else might overlook details, why have someone spend their time doing that when they can be spending their time working in another area of drowning prevention, or working in a space that, frankly, a part of it that maybe they like better or they're more interested in, when Alissa's gone to this. And that was really, when I think the first example of what we were all trying to talk about for a few years about, we were finally able to put something together and say, see, this is what it looks like if you come together and work together. And, now some more things have happened since then. But, this was really a sort of a novel thing in our space. It was so siloed. And this was the way that the family said, here's how we can work with everybody. Here's are the kinds of things that we do individually really well that we can share, and go from there. So again, now that we've spent all this time talking about how wonderful Alissa is, we will actually introduce you to Alissa and let you talk to her.
All right. So is that my cue to talk?
Alissa, that is your cue.
Okay, well, so it's interesting because my water safety story, I thought about it a lot. Actually, this morning I'm on a bike ride, which is where I do a lot of my thinking, is running, biking, or swimming. And I thought about where did my why water story begin? I mean, if you look at me, I've got, water related tattoos all over my body. I've got, I'm a competitive triathlete. I spend a lot of time in doing distance swimming in the lake. And I was thinking about, where did my beginnings of being in the water start? And I don't even know if I had swimming lessons as a child. I just know that at age 2, I have this scar on the bottom of my chin. We were in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I jumped off a diving board and I hit my chin on the board. And that was my first water related trauma, was hitting my chin on the board. But I don't remember if I actually had swimming lessons. My earliest picture, my favorite picture of myself, is on the beach. I grew up around water. I grew up at the pool. I mean, the pool, we would spend all day long at the pool. I spent lots of time under the lifeguard chair bench, which they used to do that when you got in trouble. They stuck you and you had to sit under the lifeguard chair. But I don't actually know if I had swimming lessons. And the world that we work in, where swimming lessons are a layer of protection against drowning, I'm realizing what a privilege swimming lessons are, first of all. And I don't even remember if I had them. I know I'm very comfortable in the water, sometimes more so than on the land. And I know that I spent a lot of time in the water in my childhood. And growing up, I was on the dive team. And then I made my way to triathlon in my adult years. And I race off-road triathlons now and do open water swimming. But my story with how I got involved in this space began with Colin Holst. And not because I knew Colin, but because my now 16-year-old daughter, who's driving, by the way, which is frightening, my 16-year-old daughter was 3 at the time, and she was in a preschool. And I got a phone call from the owner of the preschool, because I worked at another nonprofit organization in town. And we had lots of counselors and social workers. And it was a Saturday morning. I will never forget this phone call. I know exactly where I was, on the highway driving. And the owner said, we had a student drown yesterday at the preschool. Colin, our teachers are a mess. Can you help us get some counselors over here to debrief them? And in that moment, my first thing was, of course, let me just reach out and start contacting my therapist friends and counselor friends and get some people over there. But then I had this very visceral body wake-up call, parental horrible feeling that was like, oh my gosh, my daughter Ella was 3. Now she could swim across the pool at the time, but I had never thought that drowning was something that we needed to think about as a family. And suddenly it got real close. It got in our preschool. And I didn't know Colin, but I knew all of a sudden he was a year older. I'm like, all of a sudden someone in her peer group drowned. It was like, whoa, so that was my entry. Colin drowned on June 13th, 2008. I got that phone call the next morning on the 9th. And then they started Colin's Hope 3 months later in August. And I got involved as a volunteer. One of the very first things that they did as an organization was have a kids triathlon to raise funds and awareness. And I am a triathlete. So I'm like, I got involved in that and then got involved in all the things, water safety walk. And for 2 years, it was an organization that didn't have a strategic plan. They didn't know exactly what they were going to do, but they knew that Jeff and Jana, Colin's parents, knew that they had lost their son to something that was preventable, and they didn't want any other family to lose a child to something that was preventable. So as a parent, I wanted on board with that. And as a lover of water, I live by the lake. So my story in drowning prevention began with Colin's drowning. It is so crazy of how many ways and intersections now that my world is wrapped around this whole water safety and drowning prevention. My personal world in my triathlon racing, I'm an athlete ambassador to prevent drowning. That's a platform that I use to communicate that no one's drown proof. My own personal, I was telling Adam when we were prepping for this, I'm like, did you even know that I almost drowned a couple of years ago in a race? And he didn't know that. And that's a story that I share because it goes into that no one is drown proof piece. So my story again began as a volunteer with Colin's Hope. And then after I had hip surgery and did a big fundraiser, swam 4 miles to raise funds and awareness for Colin's Hope. And it was a survival goal for me after hip surgery because I couldn't bike or run. They decided as an organization that after 2.5 years of all volunteer led, that they wanted an executive director so that they could make a bigger impact in this space and they could do more. So they asked me to do it, and I did some soul searching. And after doing that soul searching, I left my very stable job of 10 years that had great benefits and a 401k and lots of all the things to take a little bit of a leap, a cannonball really into this world, and said, you know what, this is a chance to make a bigger difference by helping the organization get started. I had just gotten my master's degree in organizational leadership and ethics. So for me, it was an opportunity that I could use that and put it into play. And this Colin's Hope would be my sort of laboratory. My daughter was in kindergarten at the time. And Laura, I know you know this because you have kids. Like the kindergarten, you're at the school for every day. There's something that you need to show up for. And so it was selfishly like, oh, I'll have a more flexible.
Why are they here? Why are they here?
Yeah.
So I'm here every day.
So it was a chance for me. This was my plan. I was like, I'll do this for 5 years. I will do this for 5 years. I'm going to get them started. I'm going to get them a strategic plan, going to get some sustainability and funding and some programming and evaluate things. And then I'll step away. I'll do something else like 5 years. So this past December 13th, I celebrated my 10-year anniversary as the executive director of Colin's Hope. So the whole 5-year plan didn't quite happen because I got in it. I got in it so deeply, and I know more than I don't want to waste what I know in this space. And I think that's something that my story is now, it's so deep. It's the families and Families United that we work really for, and then all the generation that we're trying to raise to be safer around water, and this whole culture of safety, water safety, changing our culture. I feel like it's a call. It's a call. It's not a job. I mean, it's certainly a job. It's a lot of hours, but it's also a higher purpose. It's a higher thing. So
For sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, I
That's
think,
a lot.
Alissa, one of the things that I think is interesting about your story too, and that, you know, maybe now or at a different part in this podcast we can talk about is your involvement in the triathlon space. Because, you know, my husband being a triathlete, you know, doing triathlons and things like that too, you know, I mean, he's a very competent swimmer, but most triathletes have that fear,
Oh,
especially around the open water swim, because you get kicked in the head. It is like a free for all. And there are also, as you know, not all races are created equal when it comes to safety. I mean, I was
safety. Yeah.
I've done 2 Tough Mudders, and I was at the one Tough Mudder where someone drowned and died later.
Yep.
Technically, it was, you know, they died later.
Yep.
But people were not, you know, I mean, you're jumping in fully clothed to a very, very deep, usually, I mean, it's not temperature controlled, you know, and people
Yeah.
don't realize how far down, even me, very competent swimmer. I mean, you plunge extremely deep into the water because you're jumping from a very high place and you're fully clothed. And I could see absolutely how someone could struggle in that and they're not having an idea. So, you know, I know for you, again, we can do this later, but to me, that's a unique but very important and very interesting part of who you are, and a very big piece, because so many people, especially with what's going on now, it's such a big thing to do races and triathlons with swimming. And when you have especially that open water component, it's a different ball game.
Oh, totally. And it's a space that for me in my racing, so my local races, our race director allows me to do a safety speech before every single race at the water's edge. I recorded a video that they send out to people when they register that's around water safety. I'm working the whole Xterra, which are the races that I do. I'm in talks, have been for years with the people at the top there to do something in that space. I have visions, and this is my own personal stuff with USA Triathlon, of helping them get, because race directors don't know what they don't know. And exactly what you're saying, things are not created equal across the board. And it costs money to provide the appropriate safety, the open water certified lifeguards, not just throwing some volunteer in a kayak out. And so there's a whole nother, I don't even want to go down there because I can talk about that for the rest of this
and
time.
We should.
But I actually would love to share.
We should do that for.
Yeah. Well, I would like to share my almost drowning story, because I do think it's something that has, it happened 2 years ago. And I was at the Xterra World Championships in Maui, Hawaii, and the swim is on a beautiful beach at Kapalua, and it's what's called an M swim. So you start on the shore, and you have to go in and you fight the waves, and you get through the waves, and you swim out to a buoy, and then you kind of come back in. You can surf the waves if you're comfortable doing that. And you get out on the shore, you run down the beach, you get back in and go out again. You fight the surf and you go out to another buoy, and then you come back in, and then you run up to transitioning again on the bike. And this particular morning, where we got in on the first part, the waves were about 4 or 5 feet high, which is totally fine. I'm comfortable. I surf. I'm very comfortable in ocean. So got in, did fine, got out, ran on the beach, and went to get in on the second part. And the surf was huge. I mean, it was huge. And I had so much adrenaline, and I didn't do what I tell other people to do. I should have waited for these waves to calm down a little bit, but I went, and I literally got pummeled by 3 waves over and over. And the first one, these were waves I had Kim Tyson, who you guys both know, but he trains beach lifeguards. I had him look at the pictures afterwards to tell me how big the surf was. And he thinks it was about 15 feet high waves, and they were not rollers. So they were basically going crashing straight down. So you have rolling waves, and these were like boom, boom. And I got stuck under right where it was crashing. And I know what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get to the bottom and calm, but I got spun around, and I didn't know which way was up. When I finally came up after the first one, there was another one coming straight down. So I went back under, but I couldn't get deep enough to get where I wasn't tumbled. So I got tumbled again, second time, came back up again. And there was a third wave, and I did the same thing. And I was at the bottom. I absolutely remember being at the bottom thinking, I am going to drown. And this is not like the water safety lady is going to drown. And I really I relaxed, and that's what I should have done on the first time. And I relaxed and somehow came up, and there was a clearing in the set, and I had so much adrenaline. I just started swimming, and I finished the race and got out. And about 2 weeks later, I didn't have time to process that at the time because there was a lot going on with friends that I was there with who were injured and in the medical tent and all this stuff. But about 2 weeks later, I got home and I was in a movie theater and I was seeing a movie. And there was a scene where there was a dad and a son surfing, and there was a really loud crashing wave. And I had a full-on anxiety attack in the middle of the movie theater, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I just said, oh my gosh, this is that race. Like I'm PTSD. I went through EMDR therapy, and I had to do some really big, deep work because I had a traumatic experience. And I share that because people think that even the strongest swimmers are drown proof, and we're not. And I tell this to racers. I tell this to people at the beach, but this was 9 years into my water safety world. And it was a huge thing. And it's something that I've had to process for myself, and some of being in the water safety world kicked it up. So this whole water safety is not just the little kids, it's not just, if I've learned one thing, it's that drowning has no boundaries or barriers, not race, not age, not gender, not socioeconomic status, and not swimming ability. There are certain things certainly more high risk, but yeah.
It doesn't discriminate.
We have the same, go ahead. Yeah, it doesn't discriminate. We have at least on the Delaware shore and the Maryland shore, one of the things and this is way before me ever getting involved in water safety or drowning prevention. One of the things that you have to teach your kids very early on is how to spot a rip current. And they have them. They have these signs everywhere. And like one of my proudest moment actually as a mom, like after being in water safety, was watching my kids teach other kids. Yeah, there it is. Teach other kids what a rip looks like. And I saw them pointing it out and doing it. And I was like, yes, but one time I was caught in a rip, again, way before, and we didn't have 15 feet, but the Delaware shore, you can get some big waves. And I did not know anything. And you've been, and I was completely caught. I don't know how I knew this instinctively, but instinctively, I let my body just go limp, completely limp. And I literally just let the wave and let the rip, just let it all take me. And I remember having a visual of a rope tied around my legs, and maybe like a boat, and pulling me. I mean, the way that my body was pulled and whipped around was disturbing, and I was my size. I'm 5'9". I'm not a little teeny thing. And there was no possible way that I ever would have been able to get out of that. And I remembered it so clearly. And so when I was involved in water safety, it was a very big thing for me, for my kids to see it. And one of the things, again, if anyone's listening, my kids like to do, they now will actually go get life vests and bring them into the ocean because they think it's fun, because the life vest will shoot you out of the wave. It's not, I mean, sometimes my kids are just, it's not even that bad at all. And they're just in the life vest because they think it's fun, which is great. And other kids will ask us, we had to buy all these life vests at the beach because everybody wants one. I'm like, this is amazing for me. I'm so happy people are asking for life vests. But it really is, you've got your pool and spa, but then you've got your sort of lakes, then you've got different issues with your rivers, with your oceans. And the more we want people to enjoy it. And that's why we're doing this, but we're just trying to give people those facts.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, Alissa, I want to ask you, because, you just shared a very personal story about, your own drowning experience. But I know this is something that we don't talk about a lot. And, is those of us who are in this work but haven't experienced a loss to a drowning, this is hard work because there's really not a lot of positives, right? We're talking and putting up a very happy and positive message around water safety and drowning prevention, but we don't really get a statistic every summer that shows how many lives were saved. We just get a statistic that shows how many lives were lost. And I know you and I have had this discussion about how difficult that work is, especially when you're surrounded by grief constantly. So I wanted to, dive into that just a little bit and, kind of ways too of when you're, you know, working in the water safety drowning prevention community, you also have to take care of yourself, because
Oh,
Yes.
this is difficult to, you know, talk to. I can't tell you, you know, how many times I've just answered a phone call, you know, random phone number come up, and it's a family who just experienced a drowning and needs someone to talk
Yep.
to.
Mhm.
And that's hard, right? You know, you kind of just, I've now, and I'm wondering if you do the same, like as soon as I see a phone number I don't know, I brace myself if I'm going to answer it. And go ahead.
Yeah. So a couple things. One is mine's not necessarily like a phone number that I see that I don't know, but I have my contact at the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, who we work together on the data. And whenever I see him calling me, I used to be where I had to be in the right place to answer his call. And he would then text me and be like, Alissa, I know you're sitting there and I know you know I'm calling and I know you know why, because he was calling to tell me about a drowning. And now I've gotten to the place where, because I've been doing some really big work with myself, and I will talk about a little bit about that, of what you asked about originally, is I can answer the phone
Yes.
now and I can talk to him. And I've developed some really healthy boundaries and strategies around it. But I'm trying to think of which one it is. So this is like the tattoo show here, but I have this tattoo, which is, you can't really
That's
see
my
it,
sea
but
glass one. The sea glass.
it's a sea glass heart, and there's spaces in between, and that's sort of my grief tattoo. It's the wound is how the light gets in, that quote, and that is something that I lean really deeply into in working with these families, whether it's a phone call of a family locally who just had a drowning, or families that are part of Families United. I definitely have had some major it's all right here, and there's some criticism in the drowning. I'm just going to name it, because I haven't lost a child or almost lost a child to drowning. That being in this space, and I will tell you that I don't have that experience 100%. I have a different experience, and I have experience of representing a family, supporting supporting multiple families, sort of carrying some of this in a different way for some of those families, and then trying to be also a voice of, okay, so a different perspective to, okay, how do you turn that tragedy into triumph, and how do you do programs, and how do you do things that work, and how do you line up together and collaborate so that no one else loses a child. But I will say that this is really hard work from every which way. I mean, I used to wake up in the mornings and I would pick up my phone and I would read my drowning reports that came in the overnight. And then I would close out my day. At the end of my day, the last thing that I would do was read the drowning reports. No. Well, thank you, therapy, and the EMDR and some of that, I had to change and put some boundaries around it. And there are some things that I've had to do for myself to really protect myself, because it's been almost 11 years of this job, but almost 13 years of being in the space. And it's hard, it's heavy, it's hard. And I carry all of these families that we work with an incredible amount of respect and honor for the legacy of their loved ones. But also it is tough. And when, like, we had a couple drownings over the weekend that were not in Central Texas, I did media interview after media interview leading up to Memorial Day. And thankfully, I haven't seen any, that we had any in our direct area, but there were two, both a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old that were not in the water, but they were standing on the bank fishing. And then another one, another one that was at a body of water, and they both fell into the water. And we had 2 drownings that were in Texas, and those are so hard still. It's so hard, but it is so important to.
You're so right, Alissa. And, for me, my experience having had a non-fatal, and first, Adam and I, we seem to have come up with a little bit of a formula over the years. And we see that, like, a lot of people get involved in this and they go really hard, really fast, and there's always finally a crash. Everyone has a crash. And then, it depends on when it is. And then they either stay in the space and they figure out the boundaries and they do that, or they leave the space. It's usually kind of where it goes. But for me, that my issue that I used to drive myself into the ground with was survivor's guilt. And I would work with all these people, and I felt like I had to work twice as hard to honor the children that had been lost, because because Clay was not lost. If anybody's watching Clay. But what I was really, there was two driving factors for me being involved in this. Well, three, but one was that I never wanted anyone to take that helicopter ride that I did. It wasn't, I always try to say the feeling was like, it was not human, because it's really not a feeling that anyone should ever experience. Okay. And a lot of people don't, and you shouldn't ever experience it. The other piece has been the aftermath and what it still has done to my family. 10 years later, we still have issues, whether it's learning issues with Clay, whether it's issues between the siblings, whether it's PTSD. They call it now, I just got a new term, which I just learned. It's called CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is usually people that have had more than one event or repeated events over time. So for me personally, there was events in my childhood that had nothing to do with this. And then there's now this, and some other things that have gone on top of each other. So I'm actually ironically looking into EMDR lately, because I said there's just some blocks there. But what I realized is that I was really driving myself into the ground. And at the end of the day, here I was doing this, representing the life that did go on, that Clay's life went on, but I wasn't paying any attention to my own family, because I was so busy doing this work, doing good work. And it was almost my therapy for this. Right. But I wasn't actually totally staying. I mean, I wasn't not paying attention to my family, but I wasn't actually, because the stuff at home was so hard and not fun and difficult to be around, that it just was difficult. But the last piece of that being, I think that, if you think about like the substance abuse space, you have to have professionals involved in a space. You can't just have people that have experienced something. So imagine if you had nobody who is a professional treating people with substance abuse, so it's the same thing here. As our space grows, we have to have different types of people involved in the space, and many of them will not have had a personal experience. But where this is sort of similar to the substance abuse space is most people have had some type of touch to that. Most people have had some type of water, even if they were just a witness. But the more we grow, the more we need people who have not had a direct family member have this and be the professionals in this space to actually help make an impact on this cause.
Well, yeah. And I think that is interesting as I kind of look at my own journey through water safety and where I stand. And you guys were mentioning a bunch of the things that I'm involved in. I have figured out that I have a master's degree in leadership and ethics. I have nonprofit background. I have all the things that I do to run this organization. Those are spaces. I have an obsession with evaluation and data, as you mentioned, and making sure that we're evaluating programs so that they're impacting and changing them if they're not. And I have found that those are the spaces where I can be of most service in this place. And I can certainly be a shoulder or an ear or a soft landing space for a family, but that's not where I'm trained. Like we have a collaboration set up with the Christie Center here in Austin, so that when those phone calls come into me and I have a family, we have a referral for support and counseling, because that I realize that is not me. I'm not trained, but where I do sit in terms of bringing that expertise is in the management side of things, but with a kind and compassionate heart too. So, and an understanding. And now, so it's a very interesting, it's interesting to see, what do I bring? I constantly am looking at what do I bring to the table in this space? How can I bring more of myself in a professional way? And how do we move, how do we bring those things to move drowning prevention forward as a professional entity so that we can make the real shifts and changes like seatbelt safety and all the other things that have like public health science behind them. That's something that has to be more and more prevalent. So,
Adam too, real quick, I'm going to transition to you, Adam, but one of the things you're talking about here, and I'm so glad we're talking about this piece, because even us sharing our experience of this over the past 10 years is going to help people. because they might be earlier on in this, and maybe we can give them a warning. Hey, set those boundaries now. We could even think, Alissa, offline, we could even throw each other a couple quick tips in a list, you know, that we could stick in the resource center at NDPA, because these are all things that have definitely become a pattern. No doubt I can think of 5 other people that experienced this. In some cases, people did go to substance abuse, you know, and another piece too is that honestly, a lot of people involved in the nonprofit space, we're empathic people. Some people are actually empaths. Okay. I mean, some people are, these are kind and caring people that exactly. And when you're, that by the way, does not mean that people who are not empathic are bad people or don't have feelings. I'm just saying that some people, the difference is this, the difference is some people absorb other people's feelings, and some people are able to hear and listen, but not absorb it into their own. And I did not realize that that was me. But I was already setting boundaries with myself. After I had children, I could no longer watch the 5, 6 o'clock news. I could not watch what was going on around me to families and children and all these things. I had to get it off because I all of a sudden couldn't watch these horrors. And, you know, I didn't realize, I mean, I would cry at night thinking about the child that was left in the hot car that day. You know, I would find myself thinking about the father, thinking about the mother, wondering, oh my God, they were exhausted or whatever it was, you know, and just empathizing to the point where it was debilitating for me. So I didn't know that I was already putting boundaries in place by changing the way that I got my news. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand these days. You need to go out to the world and get your news, because if you feel the news, you need to make sure that you're getting it, where you're getting it, how you're getting it, when you're getting it, and that's not assaulting you with notifications. You don't have it on in your house all the time, because it will seep into your brain and your world. And I'll say too, Adam, I'm going to come right to you. One of the things that I think is so great about, I mean, I think we're all great, the 3 of us on the screen, just saying, people listening. But one thing that's so awesome about Adam too, is that, and in a very important thing, general comment for people involved in these spaces is to know, like you said, Alissa, sort of where your expertise starts and where it stops. Also to know it's okay that you don't have certain experience. So Adam doesn't have children. Adam will come to me sometimes. I mean, now he really knows, but sometimes when he's got something on his mind, or sometimes when he's not sure, he wants to bounce something off me. How do you think this parent might feel? You know, Adam will come to me, and more often than not, Adam, you know, it's more that he just needs to be reassured. He already knows the answer. But sometimes I might explain to him, when we are faced sometimes with very angry grief, that, you know, sometimes we see angry grief, or we see people getting really involved in spaces of water safety after a drowning that we might be concerned about, or they might not know. You know, Adam asked me a couple summers ago, I said, you have to understand something. And it changed his whole perspective. You told me, Adam, I said, you have to understand something. When Clay drowned, I had one obsession and one obsession only, that he needed to be buoyant. And I remember saying that exact word. Like I needed from every soul, every part of my body, for him to be buoyant. And I was not going to be able to be like a whole person until that happened. You know, it was a desperation. And so, you know, to understand sometimes when people are going into things, that they're coming at it from a very different place. And I remember Adam took that information into this very important meeting that he had to go into that had a lot of high stakes. There happened to be a very high profile person involved in the meeting. And he told me later, I took that in with me, and that really resonated. So I commend you, Adam, too, you know, because again, he knows where his expertise starts and stops. And when we know that, that's when we can truly work together best and communicate our message, you know, the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
To you, Ad.
Well, I'm going to throw it back to Alissa, because I know we got to wrap this up. So Alissa, I'm going to ask you 2 questions.
Can't we keep talking forever?
I'd love to, but you know,
we might be the only people listening to ourselves.
Yeah, I know. We've got the world of drowning prevention to get back to.
Who cares? It's great, you know. So it'll help one person, right?
Alissa, what is one thing you wish our audience knew about you and Colin's Hope? And then what's one thing you would change if you had the power to, you know, wave a magic wand and change something in water safety, drowning prevention? What would you change?
Ooh, like all the money in the world.
Address the
Ooh,
first.
this is good. I like it.
I'll address the first one first. So, and that's the wait. Say it again, because you can't give me two things at one time. I need to like be able to.
We'll go. What's
so,
one thing you wish people knew about you and or Colin's Hope?
Okay, so Colin's Hope exists with a very simple and focused mission. Our hedgehog, thank you, Jim Collins, and good to great. But and that is to educate parents and caregivers and children about how to be safer around water. Right. So how that is the one we are invested in developing and refining our resources, our tools, whether it's our water safety cards or our bilingual book or our bookmark with how to do your water safety rules as a family, or our brand new thing we worked with a Girl Scout, which is on open water safety. No matter what we do at Colin's Hope, we want to educate to prevent drowning parents and caregivers. And so we will do that in whatever ways we can that are going to make an impact. And so perfect example, we're working on this partnership with a group called Au Pairs in America, which is they bring au pairs over from. Yeah, and we're working on with them on developing a toolkit for au pairs and host families to talk about water safety. And like that was a pivot. We're going to do it because it's going to educate that group. And that is, we believe at Colin's Hope that education from the earliest of age of children and all the way up through all the caregivers, from parents, expectant parents to grandparents and everything in between, nannies, babysitters, au pairs, that education around this is something you need to think about. Here are the simple things that you do. And these are the behaviors we want you to practice. Learn about the water safety, talk about water safety, practice water safety. And that's what can prevent drowning. So that's where our focus is. We develop partnerships. I will develop a partnership with the Man on the Moon. If the Man on the Moon is invested in that and moving that forward. And so that's kind of what at Colin's Hope, we have a curriculum, we have a book, we have all these tools and resources that we will continually evaluate. And then we will work to get those groups educated. And so that's kind of our very focus. We do a lot of things and we're in a lot of places, but we're super focused on that's our mission and that's our hedgehog. So there's that. So then what was the second question?
So I've just given you
one thing about you.
Well, go ahead. One thing about you that you wish people would know.
I think there's actually water in my lake water, salt water in my veins versus, some people bleed chlorine. I would rather be in the open water. So maybe that's it. But no, it's like I am very authentic. I'm very much believe in so much deeply at my core in this work, but really also in the fact that we really can change our culture, just like we did with seatbelts. I do believe that we are, with every fiber of my body, that we are working towards that and that it's happening. Yeah. And I'm committed to it, whether it's as the executive director of Colin's Hope or years down the road of something. I will never be not in the water safety space. There's too much knowledge and experience to waste that on not. So
we're in a family. We're a family. Yeah. That's it. We're a family. And people say I'm all heart, but Alissa, you're all love. There's you. That's what I would say, that what you just said. You are all love all the time. Like it's part of who you are at all times. And, that is, we met at we fell in love the first time we met. I mean, it was like The Odd Couple to a certain degree. She's like biking somewhere and I rented like a convertible in Fort Lauderdale. And I had like 17 bags.
But you drove me to the airport in the convertible. So
yes. And she had like a knapsack. I was staying in like a big room in the thing. She's staying in like, I don't even know where she's staying, like in a tent or something. And I was like, within an hour of knowing each other, we were joking around.
Yeah, that was a crappy little hotel that it was cheaper, and I had to have someone walk me home at night because y'all were afraid of where I was staying.
Yeah. My point is that you really, if there's something people know about you, you are all love all the way through.
Yeah.
But I'm not always okay. And that is something that I read Permission to Feel.
It's
I'm learning
okay to
about
not be
myself
okay.
that it's okay to not be okay. And that's something that I'm really, really working on. And I think that is something that's so important. I don't care what space you're in, is that is very real. Like, I may look like sunshine and love all the time, but I am not always okay. And I think that's something that's very real about me that I'm willing to say out loud now. So.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
what was the
Alissa,
other part of the question? Because I know it wasn't just about me.
I know.
don't think.
Two last things, and you can make this a short response if you want. I give you a magic wand to change something in water safety. What is one thing you change? Oh, we lost Alissa. Oh no, she went away. And we lost Laura. Did I lose internet? Oh. Hmm. Hmm. Strange. So weird. Alissa, can you hear me? Um, but why are you in the green room? You shouldn't be in the green room. All right, I got you back, Laura. I don't know what
Hey.
I don't know what happened to Alissa. All right, I'm gonna X her out.
You're breaking up. I think it's eCam.
It has to be, but you know.
I think it's eCam.
But the strangest thing is, like, nothing happened on my end. Like, I stayed here, the recording is still going, everything.
Oh well, we lost Alissa first, and then it cut me out. Then it lost me. So it has to be their end.
All right, she's back. Let me add her. All right,
What happened?
I have no idea.
It dropped you and me, but we were. You were just describing. Let's finish that last piece.
I'm gonna finish it because Alissa, I know you got to run.
Oh no, I just looked at my email and she's fine. So if I have 10 more minutes.
Okay, so
great.
We'll just pick back up and I'll snippet the video.
And ask me that other question.
Yeah. So
yeah.
If I give you a magic wand and you get to change one thing in water safety, what's one thing you would change?
Okay, this is actually perfect. I would take my magic wand. I actually have a snow globe that has a llama in it, which I wish I had right here because I would shake it up and that would be my thing. But I would say that when we have expectant parents and they are at their OB's office getting ready to have their child, that water safety is something that enters in the conversation before the child is even in the world. And I just talked to my doctor, my annual visit last week about this process. And we were working on a little pilot here in Austin at the 36-week appointment that expectant parents will get water safety information. And that is, I think that getting this information to parents and caregivers at the absolute soonest. I mean, certainly water safety education in the schools from at every grade level. That's one of my magic wand wishes on the child side, because then we're building that culture of water safety from the ground up. But then also all these places where, yes, pediatricians are awesome, but I want to go before the pediatricians, before the child's even.
I love this. I love this.
So I'm working on that here. And so those are my pieces, that water safety would be put into the conversation with our children at the earliest age, which is why we wrote this book during the pandemic, because this is the very first entree into board books for reading these. And we have pictures and videos of people reading these, grandparents and reading their books to their infants. And it's like water safety has entered the conversation that early. And then also for parents and caregivers who didn't get the privilege of having this information in their earliest of education or conversation, that is brought in before you become a parent, before you have this child on the outside, that you know about water safety just like you know about all the other things, the car seats and the bike helmets and the stove and the poison and and then going up through that water safety is of hum through every life cycle and every space. That is my magic wand. So there's my magic wand. Shake up the little snow globy thing.
Well,
that's the only way.
One last thing, and I do love your storybook. I tried to learn Russian during COVID, and I speak no Russian, but you did a storybook.
Right.
I love it. I don't know.
This is not in Russian, to be clear. It's Spanish and English. I hope you weren't trying to learn Russian with this.
No. I bought Babbel and I tried, but I guess no one to speak it with. But no, I thinking I could translate the book for you eventually.
Oh my God!
It didn't work.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it didn't work out. I do not speak Russian.
Gotcha.
I was just trying to be different. Everyone was learning Spanish or German or French, and I'm like, I'm going to go for Russian. And
perfect.
I tried. So Alissa, one last thing, and I know you and our one of our good friends in NDPA and at Abby's Hope just started your own podcast. So I wanted to give you a moment to mention the Water Safety Odd Couple.
Yes. Okay. So ours is it's not a podcast. We're not really sure what it is. We're doing it on the Colin's Hope Facebook page. So we do it live, and then it's available on our either on YouTube and Vimeo as a video. But yes, it is Alan Korn of Abby's Hope and you guys know us, and Laura came up with that name because we are very, very different. Alan is a lawyer, and we added up that years of experience in childhood injury prevention that we both have, and we have over 55 years of experience in this work. Wow. And so we decided that we were going to talk about things that people maybe weren't wanting to talk about in the space. We have our next one coming up. We're going to take on the whole swim lessons thing, just FYI, he and I, and we're going to invite some people to the conversation to participate in the comments and have a conversation. He and I just decided that we're so different, and we have a good banter back and forth, that what the heck, let's try it and see if we can get people, it's about that. If I said before that, learn about water safety, talk about water safety, practice water safety, prevent drowning. It's the talking about it. The more conversations we have in podcasts like this, in shows like that, in the thing that Karen and Megan from the Zach Foundation are doing, all of these conversations are creating a bigger buzz about water safety. Yep. And so Alan and I just decided we were going to add some humor, but talk about some very serious things, and also try to engage some conversation that maybe is some dividing places in water safety, because there are some topics that are very divisive in our space, and
for sure,
being willing to tackle some of that stuff. And so we're going to do it monthly, Thursday mornings, once a month. It is 8 a.m. Central, my time zone, 9 a.m. Eastern, his time zone. All the others, sorry to the Pacific people, it's like way early, but we had some participation actually, and we're just really going to see if it sticks. And we're going to take on things that people have suggested. Actually, the swim lessons thing is a personal passion of mine, because I spend so much time answering people's questions around what kind of swim lessons should I get for my child, and how do I choose them, and what kinds are there. and all of that. But it was also a suggestion from Marcia Kerr, who's in the Families United group, and she suggested that. So we're going to take that on as the next one, and then we're going to see how long this lasts. But I'm super excited because I have so much respect for Alan and his expertise and what we were talking about figuring out where you fit in the space and what your expertise is in this space. He and I have dialed that in with each other. It's like we decided, it's like, okay, you got lots of legislative and lawyerly things and a witty sense of humor and a whole bunch of other stuff, and I've got some of the nonprofity more side of things, and whatever, all the things. We're going to try to bring it into one space. So we did one episode, and I know he and I had fun. We said we were going to do it like 20 minutes, and we were way past that. So I just said we get to do whatever we want to do, and however long if people are engaged, we'll talk for as long as people are engaged, and so that's it. We want participation.
Don't reinforce Laura Metro's bad behavior on timing. Don't do that.
Yeah,
no. If the conversation is going, I don't want to cut off a conversation in that space where we don't have to, and that's why we chose to do it there, and we chose to do it live, because neither of us are afraid of what if someone shows up and they start saying some things. Both of us feel like we can handle and manage that, and sometimes those tough conversations have to be had, and we're willing to show up with our expertise and our professionalism, but also with a little bit of humor and openness to have some conversations.
Oh, that's awesome.
And people know too that they can listen in audio mode on both, I believe, YouTube and Vimeo. Like if they want to listen to it as sort of a podcast or in their car, it doesn't have to be watched. So if anyone's listening to this, or watching it, it doesn't have to be just a video. They can definitely listen to it that way.
Yeah.
Right. And in the promo, we're going to do a little promo video each week, like right before. And it's funny because I don't know if you guys saw the image that we're using, but it's me. It's a split image of me doing a cannonball into the water and Alan reading the paper, because that is totally like the whole Odd Couple thing.
That's perfect. So,
yeah.
So Alissa, before we wrap, just one last thing. Can you tell any of our listeners how they can get in touch with you and Colin's Hope?
Absolutely. ColinsHope.org. It's our website, the contact form. I get them all, but you can also connect with us on social media. I mean, we do a lot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Engage with us and ask questions. We are here as a resource. And if we don't know the answer to whatever you're asking, we have so many partnerships, like with the NDPA and all the Families United groups, and every partnership, I feel like that you can name it, we have the ability to help direct people to those resources. And so colinshope.org, take our water safety quiz. That's one of the things that's a very simple thing. We're approaching 13,000 people, I believe, in 47 countries that have taken it. You can translate that into Russian. It's in English and Spanish, but it's 10 questions, everything from don't leave a child in the bathtub unattended to how to get out of a rip current, as we talked about, and everything in between. So you can take it, share it. We track it by zip code. So it's pretty amazing to see how many people have taken the quiz. And you can send the link out, post it on your social channels. It's free. So get people educated. I'd love to see a heat map of that. I'd love to see a heat map of that, of wherever, if it's done by zip code. Yeah, well, we're working on some sort of interactive map, so that should be maybe coming soon. I don't exactly know what that means, the heat map thing, but I think that's what you're talking about. So we're working on it. But yes, take the quiz. Heat map is heat map is when you see the concentration on a map of like how many people in different areas. So radiate, heat, that kind of thing. Yeah, well. Yeah, and so it's so cool because every time we do a presentation, like I trained the Iowa Parks and Rec, like 150 of their guards and aquatic professionals a couple weeks ago, and I always challenge them the quiz. And then all of a sudden you see all these Iowa, or we have people taking them. We had some coming in from Bangladesh a couple weeks ago, which is so awesome.
Oh,
so
cool.
It's really cool to see how wide, because it's that learn about water safety and my little learn, talk, practice, prevent, the learning piece. This is a really easy way to educate. So go take the quiz, colinshope.org/quiz.
Awesome. Well, Alissa, thank you for joining us. And I have to say this as generally as possible. Best day ever. But thank you for all you for water safety, because it's not just Colin's Hope or Families United. It's the U.S. Action Plan. It's NDPA. It's the National Water Safety Conference. It's your local community. You're involved in water safety at every single level. I know it's a passion for you, and it's a gift to work with you.
We also
I feel the
want
same
to
about
thank,
both
of
of
course,
you.
Jana and Jeff. We also want to, of course, thank Jana and Jeff and Colin for all of this and for all of the work that they do.
Absolutely.
As well.
It's their courage and all the people that are in this space because they have to be in this space because of a loss inspires me every single day. And I am honored and privileged to work alongside both of you as well. So I appreciate this conversation and I appreciate what you all bring to this equation. And I'm very proud and happy to be part of this world. So
same.
Me too.
Same.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Alissa, and
Okay.
thanks to
All
everyone listening. Thanks for sharing your water safety story, and we'll be back next week with another edition of the NDPA Water Safety Podcast.